It's the season finale of 60 plus racing adventures, another season of the iRacing League, where every driver is 60 years of age or over, a great example of how age is no barrier in this game of sim racing. And our drivers, this community, they love it always. A great community, great racing, and a unique little microcosm of the iRacing community. David Haynes here with Justin Prince. It said Will Chadwick on the graphic, but I have Justin Prince with me for sure. Justin, this is a pretty exciting little track, new to iRacing. If you looked at it from above, track layout was pretty boring, but when you look at it from an angle like this, it's a pretty classic old racetrack.
And classic is an understatement because this is the oldest permanent road course in the entire United States. Most people don't seem to realize that. They think more towards Road America for that stat. But this track held inaugural races back in the 1950s and 1953 and still remains unchanged since that inaugural day. One time it hosted NASCAR. Many times it's hosted road course racing. These days, it hosts a lot of sports classes and a lot of drivers getting a lot of chances to drive here. And after all, this track is a California point of historical interest since the 1990s, a picturesque closing to this season with a track that many of these drivers have talked about coming into this week have experience at.
Let's look back at the season. Season 27, it all kicked off at Road Atlanta in June. They went to Brands Hatch, Red Bull Ring, Detroit, Belle Isle, Iowa, Suzuka, Alton Park, Sebring, Interlagos, VIR, Phoenix, and we're here at the finale at Willow Springs. Round 1 and Round 6. We're live here on RaceSpotTV, and so, too, thank you for joining us, is this season finale. Championship points, well, Russ Addy has been at just about every race. He's won a bunch of them. Ragnar Wisloff, always an interesting schedule for that man, and he hasn't managed to make every single race, but the ones that he has, he's made them count. He sits there in second. It's ahead of Paul Stump, John Morgan, Randy Shoemake, Mike Grandy, Barry Hills, Gerhardus Jorrison, Mike McCormick, and Franz Stumm. 2 races this round, as per usual, and at Willow Springs. So race number 1 will be 24 laps. We'll try to keep you on top of all of that. For Russ Addy, though, I think even if Ragnar Wisloff takes 2 wins, the way the drop rounds count, all of that, he'll struggle to usurp Russ Addy, who may go on to be another champion once again. This is the starting grid for race number 1. Ragnar Wisloff is always quick when he's here. He's on the front row of the grid, but some super close margins around this fast flowing but relatively short racetrack, as he's only just ahead of Greg Seitz. Russ Addy and Bob Cohen are row number 2, then Barry Hills and John Morgan are row number 3. Behind them, Paul Stump and Gerhardus Jorrison, Don Federer and Mike McCormick, then Peter Hallstrom and Franz Josef Stumm in 12th. Over in 13th, Ulf Olsen is alongside Craig Vaught for what will be a side-by-side rolling start. Frank Butler and Richard Coulomb the next row. And then Randy Shoemake and Eugene Clark are 17th and 18th. Jerry Kerr, Bruce Poole, Mike Grandy, Earl Setzer, David Bradley, and Jack Turner, I think, round out the drivers with qualifying times, unless I'm going to be surprised by Franz Brink in 25th, who has no time but may yet still start this race.
It should be intriguing how this all plays out here at Big Willow, as the common big track is called here. Lots of opportunities to make mistakes, but some good passing opportunities. That start and finish straight. Expect lots of chances up the Castro corner as well. Expect a lot of drivers to try and battle with the forces of their cars through the rabbits here, and as well through the sweeper to set themselves up for turn 9.
Now, this iRacing session has been configured as a 90-minute race, and the league admins will be manually scoring it at the end of the 24th lap. We apologise, that may throw a little bit of a haywire into some of our graphics and may not bring you quite as much information on screen as you would expect from a RaceSpot broadcast. But myself and Justin will endeavour to stay on top of all of it and keep you updated.
Yeah, it should be some exciting action, to say the very least. Wisloff obviously having the pace early on, top 5 in final practice. Keep an eye on the 966 as well, because while Jorrison struggled in qualifying, he was the quickest consistently lap after lap in the race trim. We'll see if he can pick it up here.
pace car is in, and our drivers wait a moment, and then Ragnar Wisloff, the pole sitter, puts the power down. It will be cold tyres for everyone, and it's a relatively cold track given what you expect of the surroundings here and of California, so they're going to have to be careful getting that tyre temperature in through these fast and sweeping and undulating corners. Ragnar Wisloff, as you can see, is off to a pretty good start. A lot of side-by-side behind, but once they get up to speed, the slipstream in this Pro Mazda PM18 will be so significant around this circuit. Very high average speeds, very flowing, should lead to some pack racing. Keep our drivers on their toes. On board with 9th place Kahatis Jorison in one of the slower corners of the circuit, but you can see a nice little bit of banking on the way in, all the way up to the top of the hill, and still just trying to get that temperature in, feel out the track and the track conditions.
Some call this the Budweiser balcony. Some drivers also talk about it, that run obviously up to Monroe Ridge. Gonna make things very tricky today in that respective section, but lots of undulation you talked about with the elevation changes. We're talking about a track just at around 2.5 miles with a decent amount in the hundreds of meters going up and down the circuit. It's going to be tricky throughout this race to be able to hold on. A lot of drivers talked about trying to get the practice in to set up chances for here.
They come out of that super quick final complex of corners. Of course, these cars, not a great deal of horsepower, but they are light and they do have quite a bit of downforce and those slick tyres going on. So you see how Ragnar Wisloff got closed in on by Greg Seitz. Russ Addy, points leader, looking to be champion once again in 60-plus racing adventure, sitting along in third, and they all fanned out a little bit off that race start a lap ago. But as we get up to race speed, you see how it brings them all right back together.
Yeah, this track, keep in mind, still in active use today with 3 different circuits, David. It's important to mention, but it's also important to mention with this respective layout, with how it flows. Some drivers in this series with experience. Joe Martin, for example, telling several stories about how he raced here for 12 years as part of open testing when it came to Formula Atlanta cars. This track has a lot of touch when it comes to California and Kern County. A place with a lot of racetracks, obviously, today.
So, a lot happening up front. Looking at Randy Schumacher. Of course, these are part of the Road to Indy ladder. These cars makes them actually descendants of Formula Atlantic in a little bit of a way. Here's Greg Seitz going side by side, using that slipstream and going down the inside of turn number 1 to take the lead away from Ragnar Wisloff. Russ Addy now, he looks like he's under a little bit of pressure from Barry Hills behind there as well, but Seitz to the lead.
Greg Seitz, a former champion of this car too. But just talking about the racing elements itself, lots of aero wash in these cars when you're lined up a start like this. Going to make it tricky to run tire to tire, even in the pack. The drivers who do the best to do so as the fuel burns down are going to be in a better position as one car's off.
Might be Earl Setzer, who's the only driver a lap down at the moment. It wasn't any of our leading group here as we were watching the leaders. Russ Addy downhill on this kind of back straight. That looks like you really get up to speed, probably get close to the rev limiter in 6th gear, which can happen in this car with some of the gear stacks and in some of the faster and downhill sections. He's locked up a brake, gone a little bit wide, seen the leaders are coming and very sensibly stayed out there and let us continue to enjoy this great leading battle.
Yeah, you see the bit right there. Just if you make one mistake here, David, there is a lot of room to run off on. It's almost that of a autocross track where you have a road course set up for drivers to be able to run through obstacles or through a road course such as this, but there's not too many undulations or errors, places where you can end up destroying your car because of that ability. Not necessarily, obviously, in Sector 2, but it is a chance for drivers to be able to get a feel of a road course without slamming into walls. Just let the car roll to the grass.
Like a bunch of these tracks out here, whether it looks like it's a dust bowl or lush and green, depends on what time of year you make your visit as well. On board with Bob Cohen sitting in 7th place. It looks like a 7-car breakaway up front as well, because it's about 2.5 seconds behind Bob Cohen to the next car, Kahatis Jorison. Bob Cohen's in a great spot in this train to carry a lot of speed and a lot of speed out the final corner. He might just drop it away a tiny bit from Paul Stump as the whole leading front pack close up, but no hint of making a move into turn 1 in this group.
Yeah, no one's been able to really make any passes quite yet. Still able to keep a hold because in part the draft. But for the most part, it's just been keep a rhythm, keep it solidly on the track, don't make a slip up. Things have been pretty clean for the most part in these first 5+ laps so far. But I think this clean air is starting to help Greg Seitz pull away a little bit. He's starting to edge just a touch bit over Wisloff, just can't break it.
Yeah, you see on the timing column left of screen, 7/10 of a second at the moment between Greg Seitz, who's taken that race lead away, trying to get away a little bit from Ragnar Wisloff. Wisloff now facing some pressure from Russ Addy, in fact, and that might help Greg Seitz just a little bit. Big, fast looping corner here. Wisloff doesn't want to open up the inside, and does that maybe compromise his run a little bit as you see Russ Addy putting the nose out wide, trying to chop back for a late apex, carry as much speed as possible onto the front stretch here. Wisloff though still following along behind Seitz, getting that lead down to about 4/10, 3/10 as the track now starts to pitch back uphill.
Yeah, and you can just see it with the arrow wash, just starting to send drivers a little bit wide. Same can be said with Morgan, who is leading off the second pack. He's now starting to struggle now that he's in some dirty air. It's not going to be quite easy in the midst of a pack like this as the racetrack sees its progressions with how the tire wear's really starting to fare in. Randy Shoemake, believe, just hit meanwhile.
For the second time as well, so it's not necessarily treating Randy Shoemake so nice here. That's Willow Springs. Barry Hills, as Justin mentioned, up into 4th. Paul Stump up into 5th. John Morgan back into 6th at the moment with Bob Cohen behind him, who we were riding on board with earlier. Taking a look here at what's happened for Frank Butler as the car's pitched out from him in the first corner. And he's managed to find somewhere that the wall is a little bit closer to the racing track than it typically is around here. On board now live with Bob Cohen, 7th place. He's managed to get back up somewhat on the pack here, and you can see John Morgan still continuing to drop back. Now under more pressure around the outside goes Bob Cohen in turn 1. He catches just a tiny bit of the dirt off track, and there's no way to carry your speed once you do that.
Had to think about the give and take there, it seemed, for Bob. He did have a good story because he's actually one of those who has experience here. He mentioned, for example, John Moore, someone who builds race cars for high-performance groups, for example. He built the RX-7 that Bob had. He also went on to build the super high-performance Mitsubishi Evo for Kent Jordan, which, if you keep in mind, set multiple track records. So he's someone with a fair bit of experience when it comes to Willow Springs.
I love a rotary, so that's great news to hear. That'd make one hell of a noise around here, and he's trying to get back towards where he qualified in 4th. Now sitting in 7th, Bob Cohen, but he has a good chance to put this pressure on John Morgan, who just seems to be a little flustered in his lines or his speed or something. And you can see, starting to see some fragmentation in these groups up front. Looks like Paul Stump looking to get down the inside of Barry Hills. Those two starting to pull away from where Bob Cohen's now also going around down the inside this time on John Morgan, who manages to hold position around the outside, and they'll go too wide a couple more corners with Gerhardus Jorison now behind, but Bob Cohen goes around the outside there and takes that spot away. Took him a couple corners, got up into 6th. Plenty of good racing starting to happen. We are on lap 8 of 24 in this one.
Jorison again just stuck running in place with how the packs are faring out. But for the most part, if you qualified well, you keep the track position. That's been the case for most of the field. Paul Stump's been the most impressive out of them all, though, in that second pack that's formed up with Barry Hills, because he's been able to gain 3 spots in the early going. It's not been easy to make passes here, obviously, because of how tight these corners are. And when the corners are tight like this, where you have to have that one groove to get that preferred mark, or else you risk going wide, you have to pick and choose when you have a chance, or if you have a chance. This is your best pick and choose spot. The problem is getting it lined up for the chance to choose a chance for an opportunity up the inside. Takes a lot of bravery, speed, and a little bit of forcing the mistakes. Like nearly there.
Traffic across 3 lanes. We really are in California for a moment. Bob Cohen up the front of this. Mike McCormick dicing through and past Kahadas Yorison into turn 1.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. You have to pick up the right time for this. We're on lap 9 of 24, keep in mind, when it comes to this race. And a lot of these drivers know you're still having about more than halfway to go in this event. If you want to get this done, you have to just keep the car on the track. And keep in mind, you accidentally go off the track at the wrong spot, you might cut a corner or two. That's been one of the issues for Shoemaker, is he's been cutting corners. And if you cut corners here, you get a black flag massively around this track, depending on how much time you pick up by accident.
Great view from John Morgan, and what I love about this view is looking at the gear selection as well. He's up in 5th gear. That's how much speed he's carrying through the final corner. Cohen moves one way, Cohen moves the other, wants to defend the inside. We know that's where the best preferred line for turn number 1 here is. And you get back into 4th gear there, and I think the lowest gear I've seen around this circuit in these cars is 3rd gear. No 1st or 2nd gear going on like you get at some other tracks. Average speeds pretty damn high around here, and that's how they're getting around 2.5 miles in barely over a minute.
You have to be very careful in those gear shifts, though, to get that right rotation down, but also without really sliding the tires. A lot of these drivers have been managing that well. That experience really coming into play when it comes to these drivers. Mid to backpack, meanwhile, getting a little bit tight. Eugene Clark just took that 15th spot, keep in mind, for Richard Colomb. But Bruce Poole is amongst those stuck in the back compared to what John Morgan and his similar covered cars been able to do with the track position.
Yeah, looking now here at this group with 15th of Eugene Clark, Richard Cool and Bruce Poole, but you've got to look up front where the battle for the race lead is on. Ragnar Wisloff trying to go around the outside of one, and he spins. He's out into the grass. Seitz holds the lead. Russ Addy, points leader, goes through in a second, and for Ragnar Wisloff, he tried. I'm not sure if there was any contact, but he just tried to carry as much speed as possible around that slippery outside line, and the rear stepped out. We'll have another look. Justin, what do you see here?
See some air, definitely helping get things loose. But for Wisloff, to say the very least, not much you can really do. Just got a little bit loose in terms of having some help from the air, and in turn, just holding on from there. That's, if anything, helped more so Russ Addy than anything else, as one more car slow.
Looks like Eugene Clark drops back a little bit, and you've just got to have a little bit of a pucker moment when you try to commit like that around the outside. You know you're taking a little bit of a risk. But we know Ragnar Wisloff, one of the most competitive and most talented drivers in this league, but the risk has not paid off for him on lap 11 of 24 in the first of 2 races in 60 Plus Racing Adventure season finale. We still don't know who the winner's going to be. It looks like it won't be Ragnar Wisloff, but Seitz now, well, Russ Addy has his sights set on him. Promise I'm never doing that again.
Well, either way, Russ Addy at this point, he's just been in the popcorn seat much of this way, you can argue. Waiting for the checkups, waiting for the mistakes. It's going to be the difficult part of having Seitz have the clean air. You see right there's the big example. You get within 3/10, you start having that front nose really shove. You can't get too close in the wrong spots, or else you're not going to have a chance to be able to make a pass in the later part of the lap.
Here's a fun little comparison for the average speeds around here at Willow Springs in these cars. Like I said, doing 2.5 miles of road course in about 70 seconds. IndyCar on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval do 2.5 miles in about 40 seconds. So to be not all that much slower than that in these cars on a road course, massive. Oh. But that curb really hampering the rejoin there for Bruce Poole. He's ended up just a tiny bit wide, wrong side of the camber, no grip, cambered away from the racetrack, as there's a 3-wide sandwich between Morgan Cohen and Mike McCormick as well. That's a nasty little lip as you try to rejoin there. They were 3 wide on the pit straight in the live mini picture here. John Morgan ahead of Bob Cohen, ahead of Mike McCormick. They were 3 Pro Mazdas in 2.5 Pro Mazda widths, and now off the racetrack goes Cohen.
Oh, the mistakes are really starting to build up now that the tires have really started to work themselves in around the halfway point of the race. Not going to be easy the rest of the way, but the grip level's just about gone. Keep in mind, Russ Addy, you see that interval's gone down too. He made the same mistake to the front stretch, and there's more contact for third. Paul Stump just got wrecked across with Addy and Hills.
Greg Seitz now with an 8-second lead, a second, third, fourth, all go spinning out in the middle of the circuit. John Morgan and Mike McCormick go up into second and third. Let's have a look here. Russ Addy in second, gets wide. He gets a gnarly rejoin across the curb and then almost gets driven into by Stump, spears him across the track, and 3 cars taken out in a heartbeat.
What did I say? Addy started making mistakes. It really boiled over from small mistakes to a big mistake, and that was enough to essentially end off this race, if not his chances for the win at minimum. Greg Seitz now has a comfortable opportunity to just hold on, just stay on the track. As simple as that for half the race.
Yet now with a 7.5 second lead, and John Morgan, he was in that brave 3-wide battle for a couple of laps ago, but was for 5th place at the time. Now finds himself in second. McCormick, Fitterer, Cohen, the cars behind. We know that the tyres on this car can start to overheat towards the end of these races, and I think it's fair to say around here you spend a lot of time sort of from turn 1 all the way around with some level of load on the car. It's just constant corners until you come out onto the back straight and then into these final big sweeping section of corners.
And you had to really play with the throttle and turn on top of those gear shifts we talked about earlier, because if you go too hard on the throttle, simple as that, you're carried off the racetrack. You play it right with the slipstream for that front stretch, you get the chance like Bob Cohen has up the inside. The problem is, it's not easy to be able to fully clear with the way this track functions and the way this track flows with this car type to get the job fully complete because of that switchback for the next part of the track.
So Bob Cohen, a lot of red cars here, trying to pass teammates McCormick, and Fitterer doesn't manage to quite pull it off that time though, and he remains in 5th. It's a great run there, but getting too wide on the exit there is what undid second place Russ Addy, and Bob Cohen got so close to repeating it there as well.
I think Bob Cohen's got the speed though when it comes to this track. The problem is going to be making the pass on Fitterer. Fitterer's got more comfortability, it seems, on the defensive. He's also gone up 5 spots with the attrition starting to build in. So with him working with essentially a fellow paint scheme mate down to the team, obviously, that's going to be more helpful when it comes to him with the help of McCormick than Cohen when it comes to trying to pass by 2 cars with the same setup essentially on the racetrack.
We saw Ragnar Wisloff spin off at turn 1 a couple of laps ago. He's back in this race. He's back picking off spots, and he's just gotten past Ulf Olsen to get himself back into 7th. Still 12, 13 seconds away from the race lead, but some of the other shenaniganry we've seen has brought him back inside of the top 10, including that sort of Paul Stump, Russ Addy collision.
Give them credit for trying to see what they can do. Remember, when it comes to the championship, only a couple drop weeks available. 2 in total. A part of the race is a part of the format for the Pro 2000 Championship. You have to be careful with what mistakes pop up. Speaking of mistakes, another one into the orange wall.
Yeah, trying to get the traction down in those slow corners. Not a high grip surface by the looks of things there either. Here we have Bob Cohen once again on the attack, trying to get past Donald Fitterer. I think he will this time. He gets the better slipstream. Fitterer thinks, okay, I'll drop back in here, but washing out a little bit wide on the exit. No great exit off that corner for Cohen. That immediately puts him back under pressure from Donald Fitterer. Let's get Hardis Jorrison there in the white and orange car get amongst this battle, and it also lets Mike McCormick up front in 3rd get away just a little bit. So A bit of a change of momentum there, and this is the part where the change of direction and getting the throttle down seems tough, and the wall is a little closer, and so are the fans.
Yeah, but there's a good chance McCormick and the rest of these cars still, I think, can catch up to Morgan as long as none of them make the mistake of getting too quick on the throttle. Because that seems to be the common mistake right now, especially through Monroe Ridge and through Repass Pass.
For Ulf Olsen.
And there we go again.
And it's here, and okay, a little later on, he comes up across the crest with a lot of speed, and then again, another example of the car getting just a tiny bit light across the top of the hill, losing some of that grip, and then just understeering off the circuit. So you got to be so careful with the elevation around here.
Yeah, they call that section, for reference, the Omega that we're talking about, because of it being a camber change corner. As there goes Olsen again. That's a section that's the most technical when it comes to this entire layout. And when you go off camber like that, or have that camber change where going from flat to banking, it makes it hard to set it up. It's also hard to get the proper grip down, because when there's more banking, you have to carry speed. But if you get too quick, you whip it around and miss the corner exit once it shifts back to flat. Here's the perfect example. Stays flat, there's the camber right there for the right-hander, and this is what's driving drivers off mark as it goes back to flat.
This is fun here. Franz Josef Storm, Peter Hellstrom, and Craig Vaught are the front three cars here battling for position. Behind them, Russ Addy, Barry Hills, Randy Shoemake are all a lap down. They're battling each other, but we know Russ Addy, in fact, all these guys in the pack behind, a lap down, trying to have their own battle, trying to unlap themselves. Russ Addy wants to unlap himself from Craig Vaught, put another car between himself and the guys he's battling for position. A lot going on amongst these 6 drivers here, and we know Russ Addy had race leading pace almost, so he's carving his way back through here.
Yeah, the thing is, for Addy, needs a lot of luck to be able to get up there. The only air car he can pass already has been passed. So at this point, the hardest he can get is 19th. May as well get some extra track time, see what it can do if he gets stuck in traffic, get a feel for it, and with the aero wash, just get into a rhythm, especially when it comes to figuring out what's the best way to make a pass, and better yet, where can I make something work in unorthodox spots, such as the areas he struggled at, like the Omega.
You can see really trying to pick some different lines around here, get some clean air on the front wing, very much like a short oval kind of tactic. But it's what you've got to do to carry your momentum and stay close through this section, to be close enough to pass where the good opportunities present themselves.
And that's not a surprise with how this track really functions. But in turn, keep in mind, you have parts of this racetrack where the organizations in charge of this facility say themselves. You're talking about a section after that Omega where you have one of the fastest sections of the track, the gradual bump known as Monroe Ridge, that if you're in a motorcycle, David, they technically are supposed to go on just one wheel to get over that part. The slight bit of repass pass, the high-speed right-hander, that's one of the quickest they claim west of the Mississippi River, and then the run up through turn 9. So it's kind of one of those spots where if you're slow, you're in trouble. If you're comfortable with high speeds of 150 miles an hour on the average in a sector, you're in a great position.
My mom says I'm not allowed to ride motorcycles. Russ Addy, though, he had a really, really good look at trying to unlap himself off of Peter Hellstrom there. Wasn't able to do it. Here's Ragnar Wisloff. He can still smell 4th place in all of this. He's picked off Gerhardus Jorgensen a couple laps ago. He's now looking to see if he can pick off Bob Cohen and Donald Fitterer. You see Fitterer have just a little bit of a wiggle, bit of a slide, put some extra heat and wear into those tyres off the final corner. Now he's looking to try to go around the outside, and this is where you got to engage your chest brain to try to make a move. When the drivers in front of you go too wide, you go, who's going to lose out in this battle? So who's going to be the winning car that I can follow and go through and also pick them off?
Well, Wisloff, we know, has the pace, because right now Wisloff, for the past 2 laps, has been in the top 3 of quickest Delta laps. In fact, was quicker than everybody but Greg Seitz the previous time around. So when it comes to Wisloff, the pace obviously is there. The problem is just the lack of track position, because that initial spin and contact that dropped him back here. Just waiting for the chance for things to open. We're running out of laps though, David. Lap 21, 3 to go at the stripe.
So the lead for Greg Seitz is looking pretty good at the moment, but all the positions behind are absolutely fair to question. Mike McCormick and John Morgan are close to second in this battle. Absolutely enthralling. Again, it's very much a red car fight, and both of them go off the circuit, make some contact, and big spearing off the circuit for Fitterer. As, Wisloff might have just helped him a little bit. Wisloff backs out. Gahardis Yorison goes back through. Big incident. Both drivers pushing way too hard in the final corner.
Yeah, and Fitterer, I think, trying to check up to hold on to it. No time for Wisloff to check. Believe they may have got it away without any damage, but the problem's going to be Fitterer losing lots of time. Wisloff picking up 6 from that.
And his tyres will be filthy. That excursion brought to you by Visit California. So, John Morgan, Mike McCormick battling it out still for second and third. How many times have we seen John Morgan just sneak onto a podium late in the race in 60-plus racing adventures? He seems to do it very, very commonly, and that's why he's a multiple-time Super 70s champion, which is the sub-championship in this league for drivers over the age of 70. John Morgan, I think he had it as a youth, and he's still got it, and makes very, very sensible decisions in these races. Starting lap 23.
So about 2 laps to go here right now. But you're right in terms of Morgan. Consistency wins you championships. And he's telling people over the radio, get ready for the white flag lap for this time. We're coming around. Lap 23 underway. Morgan trying to assist on that while trying to battle.
Again, different lines. Out wide, a bit risky, but unless you bring it back for a late apex, then it'll keep you on the track. And then just trying to stay close. You open up the throttle here, and it's just about flat chat, picking up big speed down the hill. Easily up to about 150 miles an hour. My speed graphic's actually not in those units of measure, but maybe yours is, Justin.
Yeah, but still pretty close within a couple car lengths. Expecting this to be the final time around here. Greg Seitz, 12 seconds up. And Mike McCormick, I think, is trying to keep track of the laps, too, in the midst of this. Last lap is confirmed. Last time around.
So Greg Seitz leads on the final lap of race number 1, but look at all of this battling behind, and positions can change out of the final corner on the way to the checkered flag around a track like this. Here's Gahardis Yorison ahead of Wisloff, now looking to get ahead of Gahardis Yorison again and Bob Cohen. So still trying to pick off some late positions on the comeback drive for Ragnar Wisloff. This is what happened for Mike Grandy. No grip there, and he spins like a top.
Yeah, those tires definitely going to be very hot after a spin like that. But all I can say with Greg Seitz, well executed, well done experience for the 774.
Started on the front row of the grid, made some good moves, managed to keep his nose clean. The checkered flag comes out as Greg Seitz wins race number 1. And with a very, very nice lead over here. Second place, Mike McCormick. John Morgan not quite going to catch him. Cohen, Gahardis Yorison, some of the other cars behind, and Ragnar Wisloff isn't going to be able to pull off a late move.
Believe Mike Gandy towed on the final lap as well, as everyone else gets themselves sorted. Well done indeed, to say the very least. Again, this is how things look.
Yeah, exactly. Greg Seitz coming away with that win. Almost 14 seconds from John Morgan, Bob Cohen, Gahardis Yorison, Ragnar Wisloff, Donald Fitterer, Franz Josef Sturm, Peter Hallstrom, and Craig Vaught as our top 10. And then Eugene Clark, Ulf Olsen, Jerry Kerr, Bruce Poole, Mike Grandy, David Bradley, Jack Turner, Richard Coulomb. Some drivers further down the field, Russ Addy and Barry Hills Russ Addy a big what could have been, but he knows he's got one more race to try to seek redemption. Randy Shoemaker also a lap down, 2 laps down for Paul Stump, and retirements here for France Brink, Frank Butler, and Earl Setzer. Still one more 24-lap race to come, and look at that, fastest lap of the race set by Ragnar Wisloff. He'll also be pinching himself what could have been. I think the title was already out of his grasp though. If we're lucky, some of our drivers will come by and have a chat with us in a moment as they all finish up race number 1. How did you think that the PM18 race at Willow Springs?
I think when it comes to how they race, it's very difficult to be able to get the track down. It's a fun track, obviously, but when you're in a pack, it gets exponentially more difficult because that aero wash effect, as we've already seen so far. That, I think, in turn is going to be something in race 2. A lot of drivers will be looking to see if they can clean up a little bit to be able to take advantage of those who make the mistakes. If you do that, you get up to the front. Greg Seitz minimized any mistakes all race.
iRacing Art Department have been on the top of their game lately as well. Taking a look at some of those RVs there. Got some A-Class motorhomes, some C-Class motorhomes. Yeah, not bad. Beautiful terrain around here as well. You can see most of the cars on the pit lane, and second place finisher I think is going to be able to join us. Hello John Morgan, how you doing?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
Absolutely we can, and you're sounding lovely. Good race there. Such a John Morgan drive, just to pick up some spots as other drivers falter and end up on the podium.
Yep. That's pretty typical me. Unfortunately, Mike McCormick had his head down and did a great job of catching me and getting by. I made it a good race there at the end.
I'm doing maths in my head right now, which suggests that the average speed around a lap here would have to be almost 120 miles an hour. It's a lot of time in 4th, 5th, and 6th gear.
Yeah, it's definitely a draft track. I notice in times in practice that if I stayed out of the draft as much as I could to practice, and you could see the difference in times the guys were getting. So if you're behind somebody in any kind of draft train, you definitely kind of eke away from the group behind you.
And on circuits with sort of slower corners, we typically expect the rear tires to start getting a little hot, a little greasier, some bigger slip angles towards the end of the races. What did you find here with sort of the higher average speeds, but maybe a slightly slippery surface?
Not too much, because the very high speed corners, it's kind of hard to tell. You just sort of, it's by feel, is to stay away from the outside edge of that track, and then that sort of slow series going up the hill, it's sort of so dangerous that you're sort of cautious anyway. So I'm not sure I noticed, maybe a little bit, but not much of change in the tires.
Now, I don't want to preempt too much, but looking at the points, I think if we don't speak to you again, I can say congratulations, Super 70s champion.
Thanks. Yep. I think this kind of wrapped it up for me, and feels good to get another one, because those guys are getting closer and closer every season. So, Barry and Mike both pushed me this season.
I mean, more people are turning 70 every year as well, so your competition, theoretically, it gets harder as you go.
Yep, I get older and they just sort of cross that line, so, yep.
Just like college girls. Well, congratulations, John. Go well in race number 2 if we see you there.
Thank you, sir.
Go, John Morgan joining us second in that race. And Super 70s champion Justin, we got a couple other drivers. How about you chat with the race winner Greg Seitz?
Well, indirectly.
Yes, indeed, and you can hear him discussing things with Mike McCormick. Greg, first of all, congrats on the win. Second, what was the question line from Mike there with how well you performed in this one?
I thought I did well. I felt terrible that Ragnar got knocked out. It looked like, we were a good tire width or two apart. So, at the time I'm like, oh shit, did I drift out into him? But looking at the replay, I held my line, and it was just really bad luck for him. But I felt terrible when that happens.
We apologize on behalf there on the language there. Yes, we are live today. So in turn, what about the battle between you and Addy in turn? What was that like with how difficult this track seemed to be in the midst of battles?
Yeah, I think I was kind of better in the middle section. I was maybe a little slower coming out of the last turn, and so that gave those guys a run on me. On one of the laps after the accident with Ragnar, I just kind of spaced out and essentially lifted a little way too early, and Russ came flying up behind me. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I got my crap together again and got going. But it was fun.
Almost crept to that line again, but you are a former champion in this car class, mind you. And question is, wait, you're 60?
I am 60, so yeah. Now I'm hanging with the old guys, but it was fun beating all those young guys a couple years ago. So yeah, I haven't been racing much lately, but the competition in this league is really good. There's really quality drivers here, so it's been a lot of fun.
Well, you get it done in your 7th race in the 60-plus Racing Adventures. Congratulations on being 60.
Thanks, Justin.
Greg Seitz, your winner to start things off here. And it's been a lightning quick time so far, David, for the former car champion. Back in 2021, he was a series champ in official racing. He beat Mike McCormick. You're with Mike.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Much better than I thought I would. Haven't really been that quick this week. Couldn't ask for the race to play out better for me.
Good 2/3 of the lap around here. You get sort of no rest, no respite, and you've got to be a lot quicker than someone to get away from them and get them and shake them off your heels.
Yeah, the key is that hill. If somebody screws up there, you can get them off of you.
And so you are then excited or more fatigued for race number 2?
Oh, I like the track and everything, but it's been kind of a downer week for me. Our dog died Sunday. We had to put him down, so about not racing.
That's mighty sad and unfortunate. Mike, how do you then sum up your whole season here in 60-plus Racing Adventures? I think when I first was made aware of 60-plus Racing Adventures, the guys were on season 9 or 10 maybe, and we're running out of, we've already run out of fingers and toes to count.
Hold on a minute. Okay, now I had a call going through my hearing aids. Could you repeat that real quick?
I mean, 60-plus Racing Adventures, it just keeps rolling on season after season after season successfully. How's this one been for you?
Oh, it's been a great season for everybody. I've had a terrible season. I made 2 really bad errors in 2 races, and it just ruined my season. But I mean, that happens sometimes.
Teams Championship a focus for you as well, perhaps?
No, because Donald doesn't race that much.
Well, a reasonable result, even in some slightly odd circumstances of the way that this race was scored. And hopefully we'll see you in the next one, and you see off this season on a positive note.
Okay, yeah, I might be missing 2 races next season because we're going on vacation. But it's a great league, and I enjoy it, and I love y'all's broadcast.
Enjoy the racing, enjoy the vacation.
Thank you.
Great to hear from our 60-plus Racing Adventures drivers. They are, I guess, a different kind of racer than we get in a lot of other leagues and official racing. And of course, they have a lot of fun, and they got one more race still to come up. Stay with us on RaceSpotTV. When RaceSpotTV returns, race 2 of the final round of season 27 of 60-plus Racing Adventures from Willow Springs. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV. David Haynes with Justin Prince and our producer Hugo Lewis. One more race to go in 60 plus racing adventures for their 27th season. We're pretty sure we already know who the season champion and the Super 70s champion is going to be. They got one more race before it's all in the books and it's all official. And the racing so far, Justin, has been pretty damn exciting from Willow Springs.
Yes, indeed it has. Some drivers with some troubles when it comes to the corners, yes. But when it comes to the action tournament itself, lots of patience being paid off, lots of chances to be able to capitalize on mistakes, lots of chances to be able to slip and slide around with the elevation changes. Just one more race to go when it comes to this campaign.
Well, I just saw Mike McCormick in second gear to make a little bit of a fool out of me, but the rest of the lap, you are all up in those tall gears, high speeds, using the downforce on this car, and it's qualifying right now, which will set the grid for that second race. And 2 laps in a 10-minute session around a very quick lap time like this might get a little quiet to the tail end of this session, but we'll find out. Looks like most drivers are on their first flying lap at the moment, and that's true for Mike McCormick because he crosses the line, and the number 99 is the first car to set the time, so he provisionally goes to the top, but a lot of other times will start coming in, including John Morgan with his first lap of a 1:11. We very, very almost always see the second lap be faster than the first as the tyres don't start in tyre blankets and they just keep building a little bit more pressure and grip, specifically peaking at that second lap.
Remember, Wisloff looked very solid in qualifying trim in the last race. We'll see, though, with the second opportunity, some of the drivers, if they've been able to make some adjustments. I believe John Morgan is amongst the first of those who just had to back out of their qualifying run. But others like Jerry Kerr looking to see what track position comes into play for Kerr.
Well, I've seen a time from the 99. How about a time from the 199? And the answer is mayhaps not on that lap.
And that gets back to the point of if you have any sort of off tracks here, it can be devastating to your run. Some drivers are already up to 4. There goes Greg Seitz with 1, and that might be critical. He was second on his first lap.
Looking to improve on this second flying lap for Greg Seitz, and you're seeing just a bit of understeer come in there, and you get the tyres into the outside grass. Shouldn't invalidate the lap, I wouldn't think, but what it does is cost you a little bit of that speed that you're looking to so critically carry on this final lap. He holds a really tight line out the exit here as well. So for Greg Seitz at the moment, you can see him getting shuffled all the way back to 4th. This lap needs to be a good one if it's going to jump him back up to the front. And the answer is that it won't.
Yeah.
No improvement. Paul Stump remains on the pole from Mike McCormick. Ragnar Wisloff and then Greg Seitz. Peter Hallstrom has a chance to still improve though.
Yeah, 3/10 off for Seitz in the second lap, but you're right.
He's completed 2 laps, sorry.
Well, Jerry Kerr can say just completed laps. He did not have either account. Bruce Poole seems to be the last of those who can improve on laps, as well as Ulf Olsen. In regards to those who have not completed 2 laps, the difference between the two, Olsen has track position 9th. When it comes to Poole, not so much. Again, the car you're on board with cannot improve. They've already done 2 laps per the stint.
Yeah, you're right. So just seeing 2 cars left that could improve. Ulf Olsen and Bruce Poole. Peter Hallstrom, though, he's got the track for himself, so he's going to use the track for himself. And certainly a few drivers they've already had that first race and practice before that, but there's still some secrets and some speed to unlock around here.
Yeah, and that's been already emphasized. Drivers just trying to get at least used to the track, at least on the sim, because it is different compared to a lot of the other tracks you see on iRacing, where it's a lot more confined, a lot more walls to deal with. But this is towards what a majority of drivers, especially not just in this age grouping, but in terms of those coming up through the racing ranks on the road course side, they're taking part in events at tracks that are layout similar to this, although in most cases smaller scale depending on the region. And this is the type of racetrack where you get to really prove what you can do on a track before you go to, say, a Road America or one of the major racetracks. or rather, should I say, one of the tracks that are in the headlines a lot more, compared to a track that, like this one, is more so known for being good on that regard with history, but also good in regards to film representation.
If you want to be in movies, just make sure you're in California, it seems. My headline, I think, for this qualifying session is 16 cars within 1 second of pole. So it is mighty close. Still a couple of other cars out there that I think have all completed all of their laps, but given how many cars are within 1 second of pole, for Paul Stump, he's going to be pretty happy with having 2/10 over second place. The gap from first to second is the largest gap anywhere in the field, just about. So that was a really good qualifying effort from Paul Stump.
Yeah, big improvement in terms of the first race comparison. So basically every driver has completed their times here. The only reason we haven't advanced to qualifying session, it should be worth noting, and this is something that can happen here in sim racing, even when all the drivers say complete all the runs they can do, if someone say doesn't press ready to race, you can't advance qualifying. John Morgan has forgot to press ready to race after the crash on his second qualifying lap. So 2 extra minutes of practice for Randy Shoemake and Peter Hallstrom.
Randy Shoemake taking some of that practice off-road. So he's tested the limits of the circuit, and we've seen in race 1 the limits of this circuit are relatively unforgiving. That's for sure.
Yeah, seen a couple different drivers in the last race especially, David, cut at least 2 to 3 corners trying to save their cars, sliding through the grass and through some of the dirt. And you don't want to be in that spot where you risk getting time penalties of, say, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or something along those lines, because you can trigger a black flag like that and really damage your race car's underbody by coming across those curves, but also sliding across those hills. You don't want to be that driver who finds the safety truck on the other side of a wall.
Some of the walls are very visible orange around here, as you can see from some of the angles. Just a minute left of qualifying, and we are going to have to see the clock out, and then they'll form up for the formation lap. But it's a quick formation lap around here, because I think they just about only go through the final corner, and that means you start the race on some very cold tires with the truncated formation lap.
Yeah, turn 8 and turn 9, I believe, is where they set up that formation lap. So you only have like 30 seconds to warm up the tires. But these drivers going to have a fun time. Keep in mind, when it comes to how difficult this track can be, even with how this looks, and the words of Jerry Kerr, this is not a Four Stooges production. This is a track that puts up a world of difficulty for drivers new to racing and experienced to racing.
Look at the textures beside the track. iRacing could scan the surface of the moon the way it is around here. Very highly detailed, the art department. They went ham. They went ham on this one for sure. That's a very broad pit lane that we hope no one will need to use. Time runs out on the qualifying clock. Locks in the grid, and the gridding procedure will begin. Let's look at the grid for the final race of this season in 60+ racing adventures. Paul Stump, what a pole time he put in, made qualifying look easy, and he starts on the front row on the inside for lap number 1. Mike McCormick will be alongside him, one of the drivers that we spoke to after race number 1. Ragnar Wisloff starting out of 3rd alongside Greg Seitz. Those two had a great battle in race 1. Unfortunately, didn't end well for Ragnar Wisloff. Greg Seitz went on to take the race win. Donald Fitterer and Barry Hills are alongside in 5th and 6th. Then Ulf Olsen and the Super 70s champion John Morgan. Bob Cohen and Peter Hallstrom there 9th and 10th. Franz Josef Stum and Gerhardus Jorrison 11th and 12th. Eugene Clark and Randy Shoemake, David Bradley, Russ Addy, not a great qualifying from him given the pace we saw out of him in race number 1. He'll start relatively deep in the field in 16th, ahead of Richard Coulomb and Jack Turner. Bruce Poole and Mike Grandy, 19th and 20th. JC Hay and Earl Setzer, 21st and 22nd. Qualifying was a challenge for Jerry Kerr, who got out there, but both laps were invalidated, and Frank Butler didn't get out there. That's our 24 races, and they're rolling now on the formation lap.
We've seen how quick Greg Seitz was once he got himself some advantages and when he got some clean space. But Mike McCormick also showcased that if you put him in a similar spot in the long run, he can hold on and at least match the times of Greg Seitz in clean air. So keep an eye on McCormick now that he's got the track position to start things off outside of row 1. Also keep an eye and see how Wisloff charged ahead after his slide. He also had race-winning pace that last time.
Very, very short run to pit entry where the pace car will pull off, but the pace car has a little bit of a crawl, as it looks like, doing about 45 miles an hour here compared to the high average speeds. Paul Stump in yellow on the pole. He goes almost the minute the pace car pulls in, and Mike McCormick follows him across. Paul Stump comes back across to the outside line, and he'll lead the field up into turn number 1. Tyres are now cold and slippery on a cold track on a brisk morning at Willow Springs, and Mike McCormick is immediately up to pace, putting this pressure on Paul Stump early goings. Here's Bob Cohen side by side with Ulf Olsen by the looks of things. Olsen's had a pretty rough start. He's down 2 spots now and not looking especially confident in these track conditions at the moment. John Morgan, though, has had a great start to jump up into 6th. Jack Turner, Mike Grandy, and unsurprisingly, Russ Addy making some gains off the race start as well, up into 14th.
Yeah, and Addy struggled in qualifying this time around, especially with a second invalidated lap. Remember, Addy had that major mistake while from second, lost himself the draft, then had the little mistake lead to a big mistake. Going to have to regroup here to make sure he's not amongst those drivers who make those little mistakes that lead to the big mistakes, like last time.
Here we go, having a look into the sweeping final complex, getting to the inside, probably where you want to be, but now boxed in behind the next driver as well. Have to jump back in line. Russ Addy behind Gerhardus Jorrison, now in front of Eugene Clark, and getting a monumental run off the final corner. I think you almost want to pull out of the slipstream sort of halfway or a little bit later down the straight, but he shows the nose and has to very, very early. Russ Addy trying to make big gains early, which is going to be necessary in this 24-lap race. Around the outside of turn 1, he almost runs out of grip on the outside, but he stays put, gets the inside into the next sweeping corner, and Addy picks off another one. He's going at 2 per lap at the moment. Paul Stump still leads.
Nicely done so far for Addy. Going to have to be patient all throughout this one to go through. Again, 24 laps the distance, same as the last one. It's not by time per that indicator up on top, so have to keep an eye on how this plays out amongst the front runners. Greg Seitz, nowhere to go so far, has been stuck in place in 4th spot, about 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind the Stump.
So your top 4 still run as they qualified. You've got to look to Barry Hills in 5th for someone who's gained a position as he got ahead of Donald Fitterer. John Morgan and Bob Cohen, they both got Ulf Olsen early goings in this race. Tyre temperature might be in now. Confidence might be in. Ragnar Wisloff's got a good drive at Mike McCormick, who plays it defensive, but that means he pulls out of the slipstream of Paul Stump, and in trying to defend, it actually leaves him vulnerable. Wisloff is cautious on the inside to not carry too much speed and wash up into his opponent, and it means he's not able to complete the move.
Having to back out of it again, and that's the more difficult part of things. You don't complete by the end of the opening corner. That run through Castro corner, as this circuit calls it, before you get to the rabbits here. It's so tricky to even have a chance to complete things forward in some trouble.
Barry Hills has gone around, he's facing the wrong way, and he gets collected by what may have been Ulf Olsen there. Or, yeah, no, I think it was. So for Barry Hills, damage and drivers had to skittle one way or the other, and they couldn't all avoid him. We'll pick up the replay in a moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, apologies already over the radio. Was about to say at least 2 cars actually did hit him, but Hills is the only one with the mandatory repairs. Not the way things were drawn up in the early going. 2 races for Barry Hills, 2 crashes.
Russ Addy Call him Race Addy. Yeah, that'd be a good nickname. Russ Addy continues to pick up more spots, now +8. But look at all the work he's got to do to get to the next group of cars. This is the work Ragnar Wisloff's got to do. Further alongside, carrying more speed into the opening corner, and he moves up into second place. Looking to see this season out with a win if he can. And the driver who won race 1, Greg Seitz, he still remains 4th place, next to maybe try to make a move on Mike McCormick and not let Paul Stump or Ragnar Wisloff get away if he can help it. Oh, and that's how it's going to get past. Big tank slapper from Mike McCormick. He goes off. Does he make contact with the wall? He's going to drop positions and positions and positions, and our Seitz is 3rd. The pressure mounting on McCormick, and he cracks.
Almost wonder if he grazed the left side curbing, because that can be just enough to where you start to slide the tires, then you step out, but by race car. And McCormick now last in terms of those running on the track. Was about to say for Greg Seitz in the counterpoint, though, he seems to be on the prowl again. And remember, when it comes to our coverage of PRL competition, Rust Racing's been on the very big upswing in open wheel competition, David, with the speed they've been able to find out of these cars in the past month or two, including several race wins for some of their teammates.
Car looks super loose through one, trying to follow Wisloff in that dirty air. Saw him picking a different line later in the previous lap as well to try to do something about it. But for Wisloff, 1.2 seconds to Paul Stump. We saw he's found something special around here, because he had really amazing qualifying pace, and now he's getting into his rhythm in the race, and he's stretching away from Wisloff.
That's the power of clean air. What can you really say? Once you get yourself a bit of space, it's much easier compared to, say, if you start in the midst of traffic where you're all stuck in a dirty air train or an aero wash train or a draft train, depending on what type of train you prefer to call it. It's much better to have some space out here to be able to stretch out and pull away. And then if you do that, no one else can pick up the draft down the front straightaway off you, because they're so focused on themselves. There it is right there. Wisloff, another 10th lost, as he's trying to walk in the back mirror to Seitz more than he is to Stump.
Just keeps half a car width to the inside to try to dissuade Seitz from making the move, and maybe if they go together, they can catch Paul Stump. Doesn't look like they're holding each other up much on this lap. How about a little bit of side-by-side? Gerhardus Jorrison, he goes through. Ulf Olsen goes through, and Peter Holstrom looks like he's going to lose 2. Is it going to maybe be 3 positions here? I think it'll remain just 2, as Eugene Clark and Mike Grandy try to battle him. Offline goes Eugene Clark, and Mike Grandy maybe sees this as an opportunity to try to gain a spot. They're going to stay side-by-side here. Grandy around the outside. Is there any grip there? And he tries to cut back underneath, but there's no room and no grip there either.
Grandy, keep in mind, entered today in the conversation for the top 5 in points, behind Randy Shoemake by just 10 entering the day. But both of them really struggled in race 1. For Grandy, this has to be the race. This has to be a solid race. He can't be affording to slide through the grass and miss an entire sector like the last time out. He seems to be on point. He was too on point, David. He tried to point it into a wing. He is on track. He was off of it, though, because he was too quick, and never mind.
He's off it again. And it really compromises him on the straight here as well. Here comes Richard Coulomb. Big speed, trying to go around the outside. There's only one lane there, and then side by side up front there as well, as Eugene Clark gets past Peter Holstrom. Good move by Eugene Clark. Really willing and battling stuff in the mid-pack here.
What did I just say? As long as Mike doesn't do that again, he might gain some points on Randy. He was in a much better spot to gain points until 30 seconds ago.
Really close here now for Grandy underneath the wing of Jack Turner's 55. Peter Holstrom's 33 in front, and this proving really interesting for second and third. Greg Seitz looking a little bit more aggressive right about the same time as Ragnar Wisloff gets the lead gap back down underneath 1 second. Wisloff back in Paul Stump's slipstream, but can he follow it and close up, or is there too much pressure from third place Greg Seitz?
Almost wonder if your Wisloff and Seitz work together. Just stay in a line, get to Paul Stump. Because if they battle side by side, David, that loses them about a second or so at least through the opening sector. Compare that to this pack. Jack Turner amongst those in the mid-pack, for example, here, chooses to go back to the line.
Yeah, if Mike Grandy got back past him after a couple little off-track excursions and getting those Cooper tires a little dirty.
Yeah, but I was about to say, you have to have that give and take in the midst of packs like this, because if you end up trying to take, you end up getting to a spot where if you take too much or you pick a wrong time to take, you lose tons of time because of the side-by-side effect, and you potentially lose your drafting partner.
Well, it's great racing for everyone in the final race of the season for 60-plus racing adventures. There are maybe 2 drivers not involved in this kind of battle. Russ Addy's in a little bit of clean space in 7th. JC Hay and David Bradley in a bit of clean space back in 18th and 19th. Your race leader, Paul Stump, has no clean space as they pull out. They fan out. 3 wide for the race lead, heading towards turn number 1. Wisloff's meat in the sandwich. Sights thinks he sees the inside, and Paul Stump goes from 1st to 3rd. No grip. 3 cars wide in turn 1. Wisloff to the lead. Sights also goes through. That could have ended badly, but it ended perfectly for Wisloff. He slides from meat in the sandwich to top dog.
Like I just said, co-opetition is key. Cooperating while being competition with one another, knowing it's not the time now to fight. Let's close up. That's what they did in the span of just a lap. Now, it's the matter of Sights and Wisloff being able to battle for the lead instead of 4th, 2nd position. Paul Stump has to be able to find a way to keep up with this aero wash, though, because he's already losing tons of ground when he's too close in the corners from this. First time he's had dirty air today in this one.
Is it Sights' turn now? He was patient while they were catching the leader, but now this is the lead, and he has a cheeky little look in the final corner. Nothing doing there. Got to carry the speed onto the front stretch here and close up in the toe, seeing peak speeds of about 250 kilometers an hour, and I think that's damn close to banging the limiter in 6th in these cars.
Yeah, they're getting very close to one another once again with the draft effect too. At this point, Sights is just trying to find some clean air, find a pocket. Wisloff is not easy to make a pass on. Sights, though, has that experience in this car, as we've talked about a little too deep.
And they almost touch there. Wisloff ends up offline. He gets sideways in the end. Sights goes around the outside, and now tyres interlocked with Ragnar, with the Paul Stump, who sees an opportunity to put Ragnar Wisloff back into 3rd. Wow. Really opportunistic look from Sights, almost selling a dummy, and then when Wisloff ends up a little wrong-footed, 2 cars swallow him up. And how about this next group? John Morgan, Donald Fitter, and Bob Cohen. Suddenly they're pretty close. How often does John Morgan sneak his way onto a podium?
And this has now caused mandatory damage to Wisloff's car. He has to come down and pit and sacrifice the spots. Just that little bit of contact there, but also maybe a little air between him and Sights is enough to break the chassis. Wisloff again has to pit.
Wow. Not great results here from Ragnar Wisloff. He's always so racy. He's always so pacey. But unfortunately, he got surprised there. A little bit of really awkward slow speed contact has done a number on the car for him. Donald Fitterer has picked off John Morgan, so now it's Fitterer on the final podium step, but Morgan with a lot of racing still to go in this one. They're racing on lap 11 of 24. You've got to ignore the top of the column. Being manually scored this one. We apologise that throws a little bit of a wrench in our automated overlays.
It hasn't thrown a wrench into how drivers have approached this race, though. John Morgan, both races, has been extremely consistent. Amongst those inside the top 5 by this point in both races. Albeit Morgan had to fight tooth and claw just to hold on to his track position last race. This one seems to be a bit easier. A little more calmer, per se. Same can be said for Bob Cohen, who now watches as there goes Fitterer, and bye-bye, Donald.
My man is going to end up on Hollywood Boulevard. He has gone for a journey, and how he just gets the outside tyres on the dirt right at about the time you'd turn in. Why, looks like a curling stone out there.
What did I say? You go off track. You go off by a mile. Meanwhile, Stump and Sights back and forth again. Stump made it work on the outside this time. So Paul has made the right adjustment, it seems. Whether it's to the car, it's to how he's approached this race with the track position to be able to get runs like that against Greg Seitz.
Great racing. So Stump now ahead of Seitz. John Morgan now back on the podium. Bob Cohen up into 4th. Russ Addy, we talked about, he started so deep in the pack. Started 16th on the grid. He's now up into 5th. Mike Grandy's still having an exciting little race as 9th through to 15th are an inseparable battle. Take a look here, just kicking the tail out as the camber, it drops away in that corner. Corner starts super banked and then it unbanks, and the grip, it goes away from you and quickly. Not a great run onto the front straight from Paul Stump. This is the momentum and the moment that Greg Seitz needs to go back into the lead and keep these two trading it and just not let Stump get comfortable. Seitz in front, but so committed from Paul Stump. He doesn't want to give up this lead, doesn't want to give up this track position. And I thought for all the world that Greg Seitz had that. Paul Stump will not give it to him easy. They'll remain side by side. Seitz will demand a car length, will not give up on this one. He's just lost the overlap, just gets it back with a good run into the left-hander here. Where's the grip? Is it left-hand side? Is it driver's right-hand side? Another corner side by side for the race lead. Seitz will not give up. Paul Stump's had the better car positioning most of the way around. They come to the left-hander, still side by side. Paul Stump will not give up. He wants it. Seitz won't either. Here's John Morgan and Bob Cohen coming into the picture in 3rd and 4th because they've lost so much time doing that. Stump leads and Seitz takes the next opportunity as well. 2 lanes uninterrupted for almost a whole lap. Seitz has the inside. Stump will try to carry momentum around the outside onto the pit straight, but finally Seitz gets a couple car lengths.
I'm not sure how they stuck it for so long side by side. Here's the downside. It's now a 4-car battle for the lead. John Morgan has now picked up the draft and has closed up at least 2/10 to straight. He and Bob Cohen, along with Russ Addy, are now joining the party. How about a 5-car battle for the second half of this race?
They lost about 2 seconds going side by side that whole lap, but boy was it exciting. Greg Seitz ends up with the race lead, but completed it with a lap 1 minute 13.1, while John Morgan did a 1:11.1. Really brought him, Cohen, and the massively quick Russ Addy back into the picture. I think Addy, he was the fastest car on track just about on that last lap as well. Now he's in the slipstream. Now he can see the leaders, and there's still plenty of racing. 10 laps still to go in this.
I think Addy's on the same tempo as the last race. 1:10.6s to 1:10.9s with the pace so far. But now, the difficult part, getting around the traffic. John Morgan seems to struggle a little bit once he gets to this part on the arrow. He lost the draft, remember last time when nearly this close? He needs to make an adjustment and quick here. He's running out of time to make anything work. About 10 to go.
Top 5 covered by 2.3 seconds, potentially closing up a little more. Bob Cohen looks to pick off John Morgan if he can. You mentioned that not great run off the final corner for John Morgan, and it did leave him somewhat vulnerable to the move that Bob Cohen has just made to go up into 3rd place.
Yeah, nothing he can really do. Once again, it's similar to what happened in the last race. Someone makes a pass, pulls off and away once they get the space. Morgan slips back on the arrow wash. Just about had it rip a little bit to the left and struggling to the right-handers in the midst of traffic. But here's Russ, ready to make a charge.
Here's Addy would fit the tempo from the Shining quote a little better, but does he still have a hatchet in his back pocket? Tiny bit of a gap starting to form between 2nd and 3rd though, so a win might be starting to slip away from him. But he is the biggest mover in the field, and it's not even close. 11 positions gained. Here's some drama for Mike McCormick.
And at this point, he's just sitting there. He just told every single car, with the use of a push of a button, hi. So he waved hello to every car who just passed him off the track. The second race, not so great for the 99.
Might have forgotten which button on his steering wheel was mapped to toe and which one was mapped to some
saying hi
commands. Oh, he's very friendly.
Yes, but still, you have to think about what's going to play out here, because now, because of that initial swap between Cohen and Morgan, This group has lost the draft again to Sights and Stump. So something needs to be sorted in quick if they want a chance to keep up with the top two. There's just that little difference in clean air for Bob Cohen on the average pace compared to Sights is about 6, 7 to 8 tenths off. Russ Addy's the only one that has the matching speed, it seems, to those top two.
And here he is, we ride on board with him all the way up in 6th gear, kick it down into 5th. Try to carry as much momentum as possible. He starts out wide. Just a tiny bit of a dip, a tiny bit of camber late at the apex there. Lets you carry this speed. Gets up into 6th. Now looking to carry oodles and oodles of momentum. Past John Morgan, Russ Addy goes up into 4th. Lining up now behind Bob Cohen.
He needs to make an air pass and quick, though, if he wants to leapfrog without any time loss. Cohen, even though he picked up the tempo by at least 4 or 5 tenths, was still 2 tenths off the next group. I think Addy's got the tempo. He just needs to get the track position. Or hope that doesn't happen across his nose. What just happened there?
Stay with us, Bob Cohen. And he will. He was promptly back into that 3rd place, being closed down a little bit by Russ Addy. You can see the Sights and Stump started to just get away. Bob Cohen not able to match the pace or stay in the slipstream of the leaders. Here's Jack Turner. How many times have we seen that at the top of the hill? A couple, and it's so painful trying to get the car back on circuit. Very dusty, very slippery, and of course cambered away from the racetrack as well to make things even more difficult. Can Russ Addy get onto the podium from a 16th place grid position? He always gets that final corner so good, gets great momentum, but he just found himself lacking that tiny bit of speed right when he needed it to confidently stick a move into turn 1. He has to sit in 4th for another lap.
Yeah, just positioning himself for the right moment, because he hasn't been a driver we've seen today, when he's been in that spot at least, who forces it up in these tight sectors compared to what we've seen earlier on in the lead group. But at the moment, they're losing too much time even by just running like this if they want a true chance, or rather at least Addy does, to get up to the banana machine.
Sure, lots of other great battles happening through the field. You can never take your eyes away from the lead or from the podium, but Franz Josef Sturm's battling Ulf Olsen for 7th, Mike Grandy's battling Peter Holstrom and Richard Coulomb for 10th, 11th and 12th, Bruce Paul's battling Randy Shoemaker for 13th, and David Bradley's battling Frank Butler for 18th and 19th. That's why the drivers of 60 Plus Racing Adventures come back season after season. And it's because no matter your skill, no matter your talent, there's great racing. Even up front as well now, as going around the outside, Russ Addy will look for 13 positions gained, look for a step on the podium, and he'll just about get it.
I think he's got it just about, as long as Cohen doesn't make a huge send. Instead, he sends himself off the track.
You be doing these guys dirty, Justin Prince, every time. Oh, they better not run wide off the final corner. They better not. Oh, I mean, that's how tough this circuit is.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's that easy, right? You think, oh, I could stick it to the outside of the corner and make it work. No, that's kind of not the case. If you aren't on that preferred groove, it's almost like you're purposely skating it off the racetrack and you don't realize until it's too late, unless you have that experience down here. Remember, this is one of the newer tracks on the service.
John Morgan with a great view of all of it unfolding, and he's just staying in this slipstream in 5th with 4th, with 3rd in front. Now more than 3 seconds though between Paul Stump in 2nd and Russ Addy in 3rd. They are going to struggle to close that gap down, even with the prodigious pace that champion-elect Russ Addy has had. Showing the kind of drive, though, that you need to do all season long if you're just going to keep scoring good points and take a championship. It's when qualifying doesn't go for you, you need to have a good race still.
Well, again, to Addy's credit, he is a multiple-time road champ ace, right? Long time, very successful, defending champion from season 26, won a few championships in season 22 and 23. Also throw in the season 25 victory chance with how Russ has ran all season, but 6-time champion at this level, or rather a 5-time champion. That's been rarely done. Stefan Rosgen, Amonstos you throw into the mix, Dunno Fitterer you throw in the mix, Wisloff you throw in the mix. Very few in his company.
Yeah, across all of the seasons, only a few multiple-time champs. Jos van der Ven, one of them as well. So starting to get into some rare air there, and it's his commitment to the racing that has netted him a couple of championships. Here's Cohen now, not letting Russ Addy quite get away. Lead gap continues to open up, and by that I mean the gap from this battle to the leaders, but also the gap between Sights out front and Paul Stump, who just seems like maybe his tyres have gone away from him late. They're on lap 21 now at 24. Not too much longer to go in all of this.
I almost wonder if his setup was set to a point where it's good to push for about 2/3 of the race, then burns the rears off, because it's almost back to the same mistakes now in these final couple laps in terms of how I was handling, I should say, in terms of how he's comfortable with the fixed set that was shared amongst the competitors, how it feels. There's Jorensen for a good example. He burns up the rears with a slide, and he's now just towed.
So not going great for Gerhardus Jorensen. Russ Addy has got a lot of pressure on him to the end of this race now. Bob Cohen not willing to give up, looking for a good run off the final corner. 2 car lengths back, 1 car length still in it. Looking to the inside, he will. Big speed, not quite any overlap, and he's not game to throw a big send.
And in that regard, you mentioned, of course, as mentioned, these drivers had the chance coming into today to get that experience with this set. Keep in mind when you look at some of the air, it's trying to keep the crossweight balanced. It's important to mention for this closing stage of the season with a couple laps to go. But it does have that looser balance per se, as we've seen in the later stages, and that's really tripped some drivers up in these final couple laps of both of these races today.
Paul Stump's dropped back a little bit on the previous lap, and on this lap, Greg Sights now out to a handy little lead. He had a good winning margin in race number 1. It's not quite out to that amount in this race number 2, but he is tracking towards aiming for back-to-back race wins to close out 60-plus racing adventures. Does that put him in good standing for the next season, season 28? And here is Russ Addy trying to hold on to a podium to give him the championship in season 27. I think this is a great end to the championship, but also sets up some really intriguing storylines for racing still to come in 60-plus racing adventures in the new season. On lap 23 now, soon to start the final lap. Willow Springs has been a delight for 60-plus racing adventures in the Pro Mazda PM18.
Exciting race to end off the day. Exciting racing in turn for the final round of this campaign. And as we said, with drivers having this experience with this facility over the years, long time open in the United States, it's put on some great racing. Bob Cohen looking for a podium at a track he's been well acquainted with over the years.
The opportunities start to run dry as they come towards the white flag. It's either turn 1 this time, or it's pray for divine intervention. This is the last time that taking a podium might be in his own hands. Russ Addy knows it stays middle of the road. Bob Cohen still says, I'm going down the inside, completely level at the braking, trying to carry speed in. He washes out just a little bit wide. They're an inch away from making contact, and Bob Cohen runs out of grip. Russ Addy will go through and up into 3rd.
Having to back out of it to keep it clean. Had to think, keep the race car or get the spot and potentially lose said race car in the process. Others, though, like Hallstrom, looking to keep it clean to end things off. Remember, Hallstrom, when it comes to those respective standings, was in the conversation for the Gentleman Driver Award this season.
Final lap of racing. Greg Sights with 5 seconds of lead. Paul Stump almost starting to drop back towards Russ Addy and Bob Cohen. And this, as we say, always great battles for everyone all through the field, because They're battling three-way for 10th, three-way for 13th place. Sights comes out of the final corner. Checkered flag waiting for him to clean sweep Willow Springs and see out season 27 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures with some wins, but in third place, Russ Addy holds on and he becomes the season champion. John Morgan's back in 5th and he'll become the Super 70s champion as well, continuing his style of stringing together consistent results. Can anyone carry enough speed to steal a spot at the line?
What an exciting end to this race, to say the very least.
And this is the order for them after they cross the checkered flag. Greg Seitz with the win, 5 seconds from Paul Stump. Russ Addy in third. Bob Cohen, try all he can, still comes up 1/10 short of standing on the podium, but he gave us some great action. Him and Russ Addy will remember that battle for a while, I think. John Morgan there in 5th from Olsen and Stum. Only about 2/10 in it between them, and then Eugene Clark ahead of Mike Grandy, who held off Richard Coulomb. Remember that margin there for Richard Coulomb, 23.1, because on his heels, 23.2 seconds back, Peter Hallstrom, so only a 10th in that there, and then Bruce Poole and Randy Shoemake. Close between JC Hay and Donald Fitterer at the end. Ragnar Wisloff, 16th. 2 disappointing races for him here, despite the pace that he showed. David Bradley, Jack Turner, Earl Setzer, last cars on the lead lap. Jerry Kerr ended up the lap down. And then Frank Butler, also a lap down, 3 laps down, Gerhardus Jorrison. Mike McCormick went way off the circuit and he ends up 8 laps down. Barry Hills retiring about 3 laps into that one. Well, a couple more drivers might come by and chat with us again, Justin. I can't remember who spoke to Russ Addy the first time around, so it should be the other one this time. Do you recall?
I don't recall because he wasn't on the podium last one. So that's
Did
you.
he not come by?
No, because he wasn't in the top 3.
Well, Russ Addy can join us now then, and we can say I don't have any fireworks or party poppers or anything for you, but congratulations, another great season, Mr. Champion.
Thank you, guys. That was probably the hardest race of the season. Start 16th, finish 3rd is ridiculous.
And, I mean, it seems like, despite the slipstream everywhere, when you pass guys, say, into the final corner, if you're not in that train, then they'll pass you right back in towards turn number 1, so you kind of need to hold back and be a little strategic with it, a little bit of oval racing strategy.
Yeah, and you gotta be brave and trust the guys you're passing too. So if they're coming inside of you, I mean, Bob Cohen was amazing today. We had a great battle there, and good respect, and neither of us crashed, thank goodness.
That's what everyone hopes for from 60 Plus Racing Adventures. We've broadcast 3 of the rounds, and even some of the ones we weren't broadcasting went well for you.
Yeah, it was a good season overall, although with Greg here, it's going to be a tough season next year, I suspect. He is incredibly fast.
Sure proved it again across 2 races here. Ragnar also very, very quick, but he just didn't manage to get those results today.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. He kind of got caught up in a couple of little accidents, I think. Same thing with my first race. That was a slight touch of the dirt, and in this track, you're gone. It's just no saving it.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like that. A lot of dirt, a lot of parts where the outfield slopes away from the track as well, just to keep you going on an adventure.
Well, and it's so fast. You're barely using the brakes at all, so it's such a quick track. That it's hard to pull away.
So by the sounds of things, come next season, you're going to be trying to defend your crown once again, and there are a couple who may want to usurp your reign.
Oh, there's plenty of guys there. It'll be tough to beat for sure. I mean, there's a lot of past champions, and just the whole group. The probably top 10 guys can win on any day.
Well, we'll look forward to that. You get a week break, and best of luck next season. Congratulations once again, starting to rack up a couple of 60-plus Racing Adventures championships.
That's right. I think it's number 5. And thanks for hosting, David. As I say always, I do well when you guys host. And thanks to my teammate Randy for our team championship too.
Teamwork makes the dream work, and your effort in that final race, 13 positions gained across 24 laps, certainly helps as well.
Yeah, I didn't think it was possible. Thanks for hosting, guys, and broadcasting.
It's Russ Addy, third place, a dramatic drive, and the season champion, and one of the drivers he's going to be afraid of next season. Well, Justin, Greg Seitz is going to join us again.
Yes, indeed. Hello, Greg. You win back-to-back to close out the season. How was race 2 compared to race 1?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Once again, though, Ragnar and I kind of locked horns, unfortunately. But didn't have a great qualifying, but luckily I was up there close enough, and then just kind of hung with the guys and looked for an opportunity. And it was a lot of fun, kind of pushing through that way.
And in turn, how would you describe this specific racetrack as a whole, though, in terms of how different it may be compared to some of the others on the circuit? Since for some drivers, they had real-world experience here, they discussed, like Bob Cohen, for example, and a couple others. What's your thoughts on Willow Springs?
I think, I just learned it, so it at first was kind of frustrating because there's some turns that it feels kind of unnatural, but once you kind of get your rhythm, it kind of comes together. It's kind of a margin, very hair thin margin, for making mistakes here. So it's the road is a little off camber in places and just feels a bit awkward. But once you kind of get into that kind of discovering where you kind of need to apply braking and trail brake into the turns, it starts to kind of make sense. But it did take a little while to kind of make sense. But it's a fun track in the end.
In turn, what will the approach be for next season? In turn, a chance to battle for a championship.
Yeah, just keep doing what I've been doing. I did used to drive this car, and it was a lot of fun. And again, with this bunch of guys, it's tremendous fun. There's a lot of respect, and I just have to stop tangling with Ragnar.
Well, that's a good point indeed. Well, congrats on the win either way.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Greg Seitz with the podium sweep, or rather, first step of the podium sweep today, David.
Yeah, great racing from him. A circuit that we know was challenging lap after lap, challenging to pass, and he had to race for it. He made some moves back and forth on Paul Stump as they went. That's all, though, from this season of 60-plus Racing Adventures. Really exciting way to finish it out with some great racing for one and all, putting on a great show and a great advertisement for next season. Find 60-plus Racing Adventures on their website, or specifically on the iRacing forum. They seem to be very, very active. If you're 60 years of age or older, give them a go. And I always say, more people turn 60 every year. Congratulations to season champion Russ Addy, Super 70s champion John Morgan, and back-to-back race winner at Willow Springs, Greg Seitz. I've been David Haynes with Justin Prince, Hugo Lewis producing. This has been RaceSpotTV. We look forward to seeing you for more 60-plus racing adventures and more other sim racing action in the future. Bye-bye.